Before the flood, before the sky tore open, before the world drowned beneath judgment, there were giants. Genesis does not describe them in detail. It does not exaggerate them. It does not try to impress the reader. It simply states the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. And also afterward. Those 4 words sit quietly in the text, almost unnoticed, but they do not belong to a simple story. Because the flood was not partial, it was not regional, it was not symbolic, it was described as total. The fountains of the deep burst open, the windows of heaven were opened, the mountains disappeared beneath water. Everything breathing perished. Everything, except what entered the ark. So, if the Nephilim existed before the flood, how can Scripture speak of them afterward? The ancient world before the waters was not only violent, it was corrupted. Genesis says all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. All flesh, not just human hearts, flesh. Something had altered the natural order. The sons of God took the daughters of men. A boundary was crossed. Heaven touched earth in a way it was never meant to. And from that crossing came giants, mighty men, men of renown. But renown does not mean righteous. The world filled with violence, and the flood came. A cleansing, a severing, a line drawn in water. When Noah stepped onto dry land, it was a new beginning, a reset of humanity, a restored order, or so it seemed. Generations passed, nations spread, cities were built, and then centuries later, Israel stood at the edge of Canaan, the land promised to them. They sent 12 men to spy out the land, 12 witnesses, 12 pairs of eyes, and when they returned, their report was filled with fear. The land devours its inhabitants. We saw the Nephilim there, the same word, Nephilim, and we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. Grasshoppers. This was not a metaphor crafted in poetry. This was comparison born of terror. These were not legends remembered before the flood. These were beings seen with their own eyes. How? How does something erased by divine judgment reappear in history? The text does not explain, but it leaves names. Anakim, Rephaim, Emim, and Og, king of Bashan. Scripture pauses to tell us something unusual. Og's bed was 9 cubits long. It gives the measurement as if to silence doubt, as if to say this was no exaggeration. He was large, unnaturally large, and Bashan, the land associated with him, was known for its basalt cities, massive stone structures, gates towering beyond normal scale, ruins that even now feel oversized. The Bible does not say giants built them, but it places giants there. It does not draw the line for us. It allows us to see the connection. Then consider David. He defeats Goliath, but Goliath was not alone. Scripture later records more giants, descendants, men of great stature. The pattern continues, but something changes. The giants grow fewer, their territories shrink, they are pushed back, almost as if the flood was not meant to erase them instantly, but to limit them, to reduce them, to confine their influence. What if the story of the Nephilim is not about extinction, but containment? Genesis does not tell us the lineage of Noah's daughters-in-law. It does not describe their ancestry. Could something have passed through the flood, hidden within human blood? Or was there another incursion, another crossing of boundaries? Ancient Jewish writings speak of watchers, of fallen beings who descended, of forbidden knowledge given to humanity, weapons, sorcery, secrets of the heavens, and giants born of rebellion. When those giants were slain, their spirits wandered, restless, unembodied. But even if we set those writings aside, the canonical text alone refuses to fully close the door. And also, afterward, the phrase remains. Then centuries later, Christ speaks, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Most hear moral warning in those words: violence, corruption, lawlessness. But in the days of Noah, the world was not only sinful, it was altered. The created order had been disrupted. The flood was not just punishment, it was preservation, a restoration of boundary. So why reference those days again? Why point back to that era? Perhaps because what happened then was not only about wickedness, it was about intrusion, about something entering the human story that was never meant to remain. The giants stand at the edge of Scripture, not central, not glorified, but present. They appear before the flood, they appear after the flood, then slowly fade from the record. No dramatic final battle, no explicit extinction, just fewer mentions, less territory, silence. Were they diluted, absorbed, defeated over time, or did they become something less visible? The Scripture does not speculate, it simply records and moves on. But the ruins remain, the names remain, the measurements remain, the phrase remains, and also afterward. The flood ended a world, but perhaps it did not end every consequence of what came before it. The story of the Nephilim is not one of fantasy, it is one of boundaries crossed, of order disrupted, of judgment restoring balance, and of remnants that lingered in shadow, massive, silent, feared, then reduced, then nearly forgotten. Nearly. Because as long as the verse remains, as long as the word afterward is written in Genesis, the question remains alive. If giants walked the earth before the waters and walked it again afterward, what exactly survived? What exactly was preserved? And what exactly was lost in the flood? Scripture does not answer in thunder. It answers in whispers, in names carved into ancient geography, in kings whose beds were measured, in warriors described as towering. The giants are not the center of the Bible, but they are not erased from it either. They stand at its edges, in shadow, where myth and history almost touch, and perhaps that is where they were always meant to remain, in the margins, between the lines, waiting for the reader to notice the word afterward.